Oh, they're stragglers. You're late.
She works here.
Chop. Well, hello, Ottawa Comiccon. It's good to be back again this year. I'm Corey Tibbetts.
Yeah, I'm Miles Rourke.
And we're from the podcast End Credits, which talks to people working behind the scenes in entertainment every week. And, well, this week, I'm so used to saying that, we have one of our original guests is Martin Wood, who, when we first became End Credits, when we first changed brands, you were one of our first guests.
And yeah, that was
for way more money if that had been the case.
it was right when Primeval New World was wrapping up the first season, so we hadn't even known that it was canceled by that point.
That's the thing is that when we were doing it, we were talking about how great the second season was going to be.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that was a hell of a cliffhanger.
And the truth is about that cliffhanger, I insisted that it be a cliffhanger, and it had a to be continued on it. And the first inkling we had that we weren't coming back is the network said, just take the to be continued off. And I went...
So any word on that?
Yes, it's still canceled.
Yeah.
We found out,
I bug Jillian Horvath every now and then. I'm like, so you hear anything?
We found out why it was... That's not true. Nobody ever knows why something is, but we found out that it had it was the network didn't really want a show like that on at that point, even though our ratings were very good, and they actually sent a note to us saying, we apologize because your ratings are very good and you're actually winning the primetime slot, but you're still canceled. And so it was too bad. We had hopes that we'd be able to bring it back, but it just wasn't going to happen.
And I also remember the conversation at the time that actually you had chose to do Primeval New World over you were offered Being Human.
There was a couple of them. There was about 3 or 4 of them that I'd been offered, and I said, no, I'm going to do Primeval New World because it'll be around forever. Yeah. And I remember Niall Mater came on. And one of the first things I heard him say when I got to set was, he goes, yeah, this is Martin Wood. And Martin Wood, he has long-running shows. And I thought, you've cursed it. You've cursed it now.
You can think it, don't say it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's been good. I mean, Primeval New World was a great idea to spin something off, but it was a very... we realized right as soon as we got into it that it was a very... it had a lot of fences around it because you can't kill the dinosaurs. You can't show the world that there's dinosaurs, although the real Primeval did, and then tricked everybody into believing all the people that wrecked their freeways in Los Angeles were not real. But so there was a lot of strictures around about what you could and couldn't do in there, and weekly in the writers' room it was like, that's a great idea, but I can't do it. So I can't do it. And then when we finally came up with ideas that worked, it was like, I got an idea. Will it work? Yes. Does it follow the rules? Yes. That's why it's a great idea. And then everybody would lean forward and you'd tell us, it doesn't follow all the rules. And we just sit back there. The sound you heard most in the writer's room in Primeval New World was this. They'd done all the shows. You know, Primeval had done a lot of shows, years and years of shows. Yeah. And we're sort of sitting there going, what if we did, a second season? What if we did it? And so there was a lot of that in the writers' room. Yeah. But it was a cool show, right? It was cool. It was the first time I'd done that much in terms of 3D creatures. And I'll tell you, it was an education in itself. Like moving from Sanctuary. Sanctuary had 3D creatures in it, but we never got to do them the way we got to do them in Primeval New World. And my whole thing with it was, it's a dinosaur, so it has to have an impact on the world. And when you do that, you gotta wreck stuff, right? And those of you that have listened to the podcasts I've done and listened to the behind the scenes and things like this, know that I'm never happier than when something on set explodes, whether it's supposed to or not. I'm never happier. Okay, so here they're giving me a show that actually every day something's supposed to blow up. So I said, great. So I brought the physical people and the physical effects people in, and I brought the VisFX people together, and we used to have these day-long meetings about how we could make it looked like there was an actual dinosaur in that. Not only in the way that the actors react, Godzilla, not only like that, but you also had to have an impact on the world. So when you run down a hallway, you wreck the walls. You smash open doors. Not just the door flies off, but the entire wall blows apart. You hit your head on the ceiling because you're too tall. Things come down like that. So that was what we had to do every day on Primeval New World. We spent all the time thinking about how to make it actually live in the scene.
Yeah, we had Mark Savella, who was the supervisor.
He was the brains behind a lot of that, too.
And he loved working with you.
We've done it and keep looking for something to do together.
And Mark Savella, for those who don't know, also worked on all Stargates.
Yeah.
That was his first job, was working on Stargate.
Yeah.
I think as just a compositor. And then
all 3 seasons.
By the end,
all
he was
three,
the
three
supervising
shows.
director.
Yeah.
Although, actually, he had switched over to Atlantis towards the end, and because I remember the dragon conversation.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. He wasn't responsible for the dragon.
He will back out of certain things like the bubblegum creature in the forest. That wasn't one of his either. The inside-out creature, that wasn't his idea. So, but then, again, his other thing about it, and this is the other thing that we insisted on when we went into it, was you have got to have, if you've got an antagonist that doesn't have a face, it has to have a personality. So when you watch one of Amanda's shows, the one where the demonosauruses come in and they start, the first time you see them, they run into the Canadian Tire and they start biting each other and fighting with each other. And that was, again, that's Mark's brain saying, how do I give these guys a personality? And that was what he did.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite episodes.
Yeah, that was a good one.
The Canadian Tire episode.
And you guys, you wouldn't believe what got cut out of it.
Yeah.
Niall was a big hockey fan and wanted more hockey references to it, but the Americans didn't get it.
Yeah. But speaking of more Canadiana, right before we actually started talking, you were telling the story about the Canadian flags at the beginning of Atlantis.
When I moved over to Atlantis, and they said, "Okay, we got to figure out this design. We got to do this." And I was working with Richard Hudolin and not Richard, with James Robbins on what the design was going to be. And then Bridget McGuire was in there, and we're all sitting there talking about what the design of the gate room was going to be. And I said, how do we make it more Canadian? We're standing. You know what the gate room looked like in Atlantis. So we're sitting there going, how do we make the Pegasus gate room more Canadian? Well, the one thing I can do is fill it with Canadians, because they're going to talk like us anyway, eh? So what I did in the very first shot, and this is the story I was telling these guys, is the very first shot of the show where I start the Steadicam move all the way through, and you see all the players, and you pass some of them, and I made sure that you see the Canadian flags on people's arms in that, and you really see them. And we finished it, and it took, I can't remember how many takes we did right now, but there were like 3 or 4, and it was a very complex shot to do. It's like the beginning of The Player, where things move into other things, and everybody has to have their line right. And I had just finished watching The Russian Ark. Has anybody ever seen that? The Russian Ark? It's a move through the Hermitage. It's a 2-hour movie that's one shot. So if you ever want to see it, don't watch the movie because it's awful. But go see the making of The Russian Ark, and you'll understand how one of these shots gets put together, because this team of people moves through, and everybody cues different people, and it's moving through these centuries worth of stuff, and the Hermitage Museum, and they had to move through the whole thing, and they didn't get it in the first take. So imagine if you're the last guy. The other thing you get to see when you watch the movie is all these background people looking at the camera. But there's no time to stop for that, because we've got another 5,000 extras to go through over here. So anyway, on a smaller scale, the very first shot of Atlantis was this kind of thing, where it's like, okay, move through this and move through this. And in order to do it, I walk with cameras. I don't know why. I have a monitor in front of me, and I stand there, and if I stand in one spot, it transmits to me, but I walk with the camera. And sometimes I talk to the cameraman as we're going. And it makes them crazy, because they're concentrating on keeping it level. And a Steadicam is not an easy thing to fly. And I've done it myself before, just in order to show myself how hard it was. Your body is wrecked, it just twists you around, because it's the weight of these cameras. And when we were doing that, they were film cameras. They were, these BLs that weighed 750,000 pounds, okay? And it had to hang on this thing and float. And I'm making them do these things. They walk upstairs and they do this thing. And Steadicam operators have this move called a Don Juan, and it's where they switch hands because there's a chicane in the hallway or something. They can't get through, so they go like this and they go, okay, I just got. And they switch hands and they're doing this. They're holding it and they're just touching it with their hand like this to keep it level. And then they go like this. And at that point, you always hear me in the background go, wow, I love that. I like when you do that. And he goes, it's the most difficult thing I have to do. It's like, that's cool, do it again. No, it's the most difficult thing I have to do. No, do it again. And it's like, no, okay, I'll switch back over to this. But I've always done that. Ever since I started directing, I started walking with Steadicam operators. So I have 3 Steadicam operators I use all the time. And on the show I'm on right now, there's this Steadicam operator that when he signed his deal, he actually put in it as a joke. He said, Martin must keep 3 meters away from me at all times. So I have the producer of the show coming up to me going, Chris just put this in his contract. I'm not sure if it's a joke or not, but I have to sign it. I said, fair enough. 3 meters. Might be above him, though. So, anyway.
Awesome. Well, shall we take some questions from our audience?
Yeah.
Oh, so do we have a Q&A mic?